with Paul Daner, Mark Shalafoo, from listener questions to some running gags. Insider stories, ambush light, that dad life and respect for flags. Kick off the weekend, alright? It's the Growler Friday Show, it's Dey Light.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Dey Light. Paul Daner Jr., Mark Shalafoo here with you. Shout out to the Bengal boys. We got a whole season of new music. They have crushed it. You got to refresh it a little bit. You know, give it a little bit of a tune up. We got new stuff that we talk about a lot. Things are changing. The world is moving forward. We have to move forward in our intro music with it. So shout out to the Bengal boys for cutting us some new stuff.
Yeah, they're in mid-season form. You know, you evolve or you get left behind. And I like the new music. The show's constantly changing. So it's a strong entry for our new theme.
Yeah, you know what? And you know what I like to do when you open up a podcast is talk about Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show. I find like that's a really good way to get people really, really involved.
The universal appeal. Yeah.
Universal appeal. Yeah. No, but one thing I used to love as a kid growing up in the 80s was I did watch the Cosby Show. And every year they would have a new open. And I remembered the season and that time frame of the show by the new open. They had one where they were dancing and they were in like tuxes and stuff. And then when they were in Hawaii and then different stuff like that. And so I always liked that. I feel like new season should have new songs, should have new intros, should feel fresh and different from the last one. You shouldn't feel old and repetitive. So that's where I land on this. That's why I really like this refresh.
Yeah, and I like that it touches on some of the new running bits that we've been doing in your obsessions, and I just hope the next season music can reflect your adoration of Bill Cosby. Maybe work that into the song, just how much you idolize the guy and what he stands for and what he believes in terms of theme music and anything else. So, yeah, great start to the show on a rainy Friday. It's just, let's go Cosby heavy right out of the gate.
Let's go. Look, it was a funny show in the 80s, and that's where it ends. Let's talk though about this show. We got to move it forward. I mean, I could do that all day.
Talk Cosby. Yeah, let's cut you off right there and go to something happier.
Something happier. Absolutely. Let's talk about how the fact that we have Jay and I did a show last night off of the joint practices in Chicago. So PD and J is up on the YouTube channel, and also, of course, up in your podcast feeds. So if you want to get all your joint practice recap info, Jay was boots on the ground there in Chicago. It is all there for you. We break down everything that happened there, Burrow in the rain, the injuries, things like that, with just plays that happen, whatever. All of that is there for you. So go check that out. Listen to Jay and I kind of reacting to the joint practice in Chicago. But we've got everything else. Mark and I are going to touch on everything else here as we go forward, but make sure you if you have questions you want us to answer, anything you just want to tell us, you want to ambush us with, thegrowlerpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube. See, if you're watching us on YouTube here, you got a little QR code right here in the top corner. Go there. You can subscribe to all of the things. There it is, up there. You can subscribe to all the things there. So make sure you go in there and get hooked into all of our content. It is flowing right now. We got tons of stuff. Speaking of tons of stuff, though, round of applause to all of you that showed up at the live show last week. It was awesome. So much fun. We're doing another one Thursday after the Colts game, or before the Colts game, excuse me. The Colts game's at 8. We are going to be at 4. At BetMGM, Sportsbook Nation, Kitchen and Bar at the Banks. Chaos will ensue. $3 Cincy Light, $6 Queen City Nacho Trays. Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins are happening at GABP that night, so it's going to be a wild crowd. We got ideas. We're going to have to get them in the mix of a mix of Bengals and concert show and turn it into a fun party that way.
Yeah, it was such a blast. Week 1 was an awesome hang, and we got to meet so many Growl pals. It was a lot of fun. Jay was really bringing the heat for his contribution to the Growler Grand Prize, so I appreciated Jay's effort on that front. really forces us to elevate our games as we each kind of contribute something to that grand prize, which is a lot more than just what we're bringing to the table. Thankfully, we had so much stuff that we were giving away. That was kind of insane. It felt like everyone that was there got something.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was a ton of you there, and we just had a lot of stuff to give. So it was a nice combination of us having a lot of free stuff and a lot of you being there. So all the graders, I mean, it was just like I was able to go back and watch some of the stream later of what you were doing, because you were just roaming out there, and I was like, man, everybody is getting graders, man. It's just people are excited. One of my favorite moments was when it was like, who wants graders? And every hand in the entire place went up immediately. I was like,
I was like, okay, it's time to get the graders to the people. Our people are graders worthy, and they got it. And we came through for them, which is what this show's all about. We had a great grand prize. We had a few Growl Pals in the running for it. The raffle went to a Vikings fan, and his team was immediately cursed. So, maybe don't enter the prize if you're not a Bengals fan, if you don't want that heat. Because if it doesn't go to a Growl Pal, then just know that your team is going to get cursed. You're going to have injuries. Your team's going to fall apart. So stay out of it, Vikings fans.
No question. And now the Growler flag, it flies at Nation and BetMGM. It is down there.
Oh, it stays there? Nice.
The flag is staying. It is flying, so you can, pay your respects to it, I guess, if you're in there.
It's not a solid
flag at home now. Now I'm flagless. Now I'm flagless at my house, which is
what are you flying then today?
Well, I back to school flag is up, right?
Back to school flag.
Sure.
All right.
Back to school flag up. That goes through this weekend, and then we'll move forward.
What's on the back to school flag? Just like a little person getting
pencils,
on a bus,
notebooks, buses, things of that nature.
All right. Yeah, that really encapsulates the back to school experience.
Sure. All right. Let's get into I want to quick touch on some news. So last night on the show with Jay, we had not kind of gotten this confirmed yet, but we do have now Chris Evans, who went off on a cart and his leg in an air cast, had a torn patellar tendon. He is out for the year. Bad news for him. He was kind of fighting for a spot in the back of that room. Deontay Smith went off as well. We don't have official on him, but he was particularly distraught going off. So we'll see what happens with that. Didn't mention it because we were talking about a joint practice. Jeff Gunter retired or went on the reserve retired list. I think he's just, he's only 25, 7th round pick a couple years ago, had some decent run in the preseason games, since he's joined the team, but never really got much going in the regular season. I think he wants to go and finish his degree and start kind of moving forward with his life. Maybe he reverses on that decision at some point, but I think for now it's just if your head and your mind and your body aren't in it, it's hard to go forward and just keep pushing through camp and face probably a practice squad spot and whatever, maybe nagging injuries, all that it involves. So loved Jeff Gunter. I actually wrote a story on him his rookie year about him, and his mom had been battling cancer and supporting him through following his dream. And he's just a really good dude, big, wide smile. Look forward to seeing whatever comes next for Jeff Gunter. Good luck with that. Favorite story of the week time? What do you got?
I don't know if it's my favorite story of the week, but it seems like a lot of Bengals fans were kind of despondent after the joint practice. My wife was chief among them. She looked like a relative had died yesterday after that practice. Like she had that look on her face, just an ashen look. I was like, what's wrong? And she's like, did you see what happened at the joint practice? I was like, oh no, injury. She's like, oh yeah, there were injuries, but worse than that, we might be cooked this year. I'm like, no, you can't go to that. Like she was freaking out that Joe Burrow threw 3 interceptions in a practice. And there was a little bit too much of that Joey B slander on the timeline. I get that Bengals fans are concerned that it wasn't a great practice, but it was a practice. Like I've seen him throw interceptions in a game before and then bounce back from that and go on to have a terrific season. So I don't have a whole lot of stock in, the overreactions to that. It was tough to cheer up my spouse. She was hearing none of it, but I'm like, remember what she's done, what he has done in this league. Like we know what Joe Burrow can do.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of questions with these starters. We know what he's going to do with Chase and Higgins and what they're capable of. What are some of the question marks we had coming into the offseason? What's the right tackle situation going to look like? The Mims injury is a setback for sure. But before that, he was looking incredible. He was looking great. You should feel optimistic about that. You know, the running back situation, both of them have looked good at times. So there's a lot to feel positive about still. And I'm not ready to jump off the cliff like my wife is in this case. Yeah, Joe Burrow didn't look good in the rain. That's, you know, that's not the end of the world.
Hey, that's good news, because that's standard for his career, apparently. I mean, that's just Burrow in the rain, bad news. And so Burrow in not the rain, really good. And so if he continues that streak for the rest of his life, and you just hope it never rains in the playoffs, good in the snow. You know, we know that.
Right. If it's cold and that rain freezes into snow, he's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love the idea of like it's getting colder on a night game in the playoffs and he's just terrible as it's rain then the moment it turns to snow, he just turns into Superman and just starts ripping it. Just needed that rain to go away. This is the thing. This is kind of my story is this is my favorite core of Bengals fans. This is just Bengals fans really leaning into the first disastrous moment of the season. That's really Bengals fans and who they are, is when the first moment where things feel like they're going sideways, Bengals fans just resort into their true selves that I enjoy the most. And, you know, especially those that have been around, those that the pre-Burrow, certainly if you're pre-Marvin, this is just your outlook on all of sports and maybe life, is that everything's going to be terrible and continue to go wrong. But I love it. So the memes that I get sent all the time of many different people guzzling different forms of liquor, the Steve Carell, deep exhales, this is fine shows up a lot. That's the point where you're like, okay, now the season is here. Now Bengals fans are kind of settling into freaking out over things that when they think that they're maybe going wrong. I like the new one that I got this year, which is just someone just sending me a picture of their child with a concerned baby face. You know, like when babies can look concerned because they kind of look like they're doing an adult face, but they're a baby. I really enjoyed getting that. The more creative you people get, the more I like it. So was this keep getting creative with your freakouts?
Was this a meme format, or was this somebody just sending
just a photo
of their child?
It just showed up as a random picture of a child who had a look that I thought looked concerned.
Are you sure it's Bengals related then? Maybe somebody was just posting a pic of their kid that wasn't a good pic, but they're blind to that because they think like, oh yeah, she's adorable.
And they just decided to send it at me in the mentions of
you like
timeline about the thread about the offensive line situation. I'm not sure why.
Yeah,
they would do that, but don't just send me all of your children's pictures. I mean, I it's fine. But I mean, I feel like there's other ways probably to convey, but
get
creative. I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different meme formats you can go with. You know, the Tobey Maguire crying one, that was a big one that I've seen a lot lately too. And and I get it. Listen, I know that especially if your formative years as a Bengals fans were those pre-Marvin years, like there's a lot of trauma to unpack there. Even the more recent fans, with what Joe Burrow went through last season, I understand a lot of concern there. I'm not above it. I was at that preseason game. I was watching him cook on that opening drive. And then I had listened to you earlier in the day talk about the glories of StubHub and cheap tickets. So I ended up springing for like $40 and sat in the 8th row, something, really extravagant. And I'm not going to lie, there was a time on that second or third drive and I was watching the sideline where it's a little bit more fun. And I saw Joe Burrow shake his wrist a little bit. I was like, no, don't show any discomfort with the wrist. What's wrong? Is he okay? Is he still going to be high-fiving people? But one bad practice from Joe Burrow let the memes fly, I guess.
Yeah.
And, the injury situation too is concerning to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, this is stuff that happens. And I think that you gotta roll with it. But I love that the way that Bengals fans roll with it, and I think most fans do, is just resort to pure internet freak out. And that's fun. Like that's pure sports fandom to me. That's what I enjoy.
There have been so many injuries, and I mean, it's not different from like any other season. There's always a lot of key injuries that happen during training camps, and at least it hasn't been something super high profile like we've seen in the years past. Other teams have been suffering from losing some key guys. I don't even know what the answer is there. Is it training camps too long, do you think, or do you think that's just something you're never going to avoid?
football's too hard to stay healthy in. I mean, it's just this is the game. The bottom line is, though, Joe Burrow is healthy, and that is what matters more than anything else. And so it's better than in previous camps, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
I mean, Mims, right? But outside of that, what are we talking about? What injuries are we
not super serious
talking
either?
about?
He's not going to be for half the season or anything.
I don't look at the projected starting lineup and show me the injuries. Okay, like Mims is the only one, and you have Trent Brown, who was potentially going to be that guy too.
Well, Brad Robbins, he's got the hip flexor.
Brad Robbins, there
starting
you go.
Punter.
These are your concerns: a punter battle and a right tackle battle.
It could be worse.
The two places where an injury has occurred. We have some questions.
We do.
Let's dive into some questions.
We got the Growl Pals sending their questions to the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. We got some good ones. This first one, in light of these recent injuries, run, pass, or boot, these positional free agent signings, or maybe even a possible trade that the Bengals should make for these position groups: defensive tackle, offensive tackle, or running back. What's the biggest focus here for the team, you think, that they need to make a move?
I still think that you're looking, even though they have 11 defensive tackles in camp right now, you're looking for a run stuffing defensive tackle. You have whatever's going on with Jackson McKinley and his injury. You still didn't even really know what kind of contributions you were going to get from him anyway, as a rookie pick 97 overall. I still think that's the top of the list. A fourth tackle sounds great, but I think they're in a decent situation there with their top three. And the fourth, everybody wants a fourth tackle. Everyone wants a decent fourth tackle. I don't know that a decent fourth offensive tackle exists in the NFL. Like, I don't know who that guy is, what team he's on. No fan base is comfortable if their fourth offensive tackle is out there. I can tell you that right now. Not a one. So what does that look like? Hard to know. So I would probably boot that. I still think running back. I've been talking about Samaje Perine, for 2 years since he signed with Denver originally. He appears to be on the cut line there. It still feels like he might get let go, and the Bengals could either execute a trade for him or just wait for him to get cut and swoop him up to sign. I think that is probably the most likely, but I think what they need most is a run stuffing defensive tackle. This is an interesting topic though, because I like this time of year where we start talking about trades. The Bengals, it's one of the few times the Bengals trade. Like, if you look in their history in the last 10, 15 years, they trade in April around the draft, and they trade right at the end of cuts. Like, these are the times when they execute trades for the most part, and almost no other time. Let's look at some of the history. So this would be the kind of thing that you're looking for, and that they typically do, is a player who's probably not going to make their team, but maybe has value elsewhere, being traded as a player for player swap, often to fill a need that they have that opens up. Billy Price for BJ Hill is a prime example of the Bengals fleecing the Giants that they would be interested in trying to execute again. They did that was in 2021. They did Austin Calitro for Christian Covington. Kind of a nothing trade, but Covington was a guy they needed help on the defensive line, and they got a guy who had skins on the wall and gave him snaps that year. It was a bad season in 2020. In 2017, they traded Ben Wickery and Marquise Flowers and got late round picks for it, guys they were gonna let go, and they were able to get something for them. In 2011, they traded Clinton McDonald for Kelly Jennings, a DB named Kelly Jennings. For those of you that have been around for a while would remember that trade. It was kind of an L trade for the Bengals. Clinton McDonald had a pretty nice career, but they needed DB help that year, so they traded for Kelly Jennings. And then in 2010, they traded David Jones for Reggie Nelson, one of the best trades in recent Bengals history. Reggie Nelson, who was a stud for the Bengals for a number of years, they got for a guy named David Jones, who they let go. So that's the type of trade that you would expect. And the Bengals have some, I guess you'd call them gluts, extras, potential guys they would let go of because they have a few too many. I think tight end. They've got, Tanner McLaughlin. If someone wants a it liked Tanner McLaughlin in the draft and didn't get him and has a tight end need, I could see them trading him. I think they really like Cam Grandy, who's undrafted and could hold on to him on the practice squad. I mean, they're not going to keep 5 tight ends. McLaughlin's probably going to be a guy that gets cut. So maybe you see them trade Tanner McLaughlin for somebody else. Maybe you see them go wide receiver. I mean, they have, I think, their big 6. Maybe somebody likes what they've seen in camp or in practice, in preseason games, excuse me, easy for me to say, from Kendrick Pryor, from Shedrick Jackson, from Kwame Lassiter, any of those guys. Maybe they think that they see something there and they'd be willing to give something for them. The interesting one to me is quarterback. And no, not trading Joe Burrow. But look, Logan Woodside has been around. And I heard Dan Horden, Dave Lapham touching on this briefly in their podcast yesterday, in that, Jake Browning has been here. He's dealing with this rib thing. What Jake is. He has trade value. I mean, people saw Jake play last year and saw that he could bring it. Logan Woodside, if he has been around, he's found a way to keep himself in the league. If he plays well, kind of similarly like he did when he came in and kind of got the offense moving the other night in these last couple of preseason games, maybe Logan creates value for himself. Or maybe you consider something like maybe we could get something real for Jake Browning. Teams that need quarterbacks, that lose backup quarterbacks to injury or starting quarterbacks to injury. Maybe a place that Jake Browning used to be in Minnesota. You never know what can pop up, what teams need, and there's real value if you have anybody to think it contributes as quarterback. Don't forget the Bengals can pick up the phone and call A.J. McCarron too, who was around last year, to come refill in the back of that room if they needed to. So that's an intriguing with a question mark to me of maybe that could be a position that they trade from to try to acquire one of these things that they need. So I would be curious to see how all that plays out. Maybe nothing happens, but I think that's kind of a view of where their potential trade market lives as they enter a time that they've been known to make a few trades.
So let's say, for a hypothetical then, like if they're exploring a trade and they're going to send Jake Browning out, how much of Jake Browning's, preseason effort, those 5 3 and outs and the rib injury, like how much does that weigh down on his value versus what you saw him do as a starter last year, which he played pretty well at times. So what are you getting for Jake Browning?
I mean, I think you could get somebody who's a real player. I mean, I think you get somebody who's a fringe starter for what Jake Browning was last year. I mean, I don't think that they'll care about the preseason. There's so many variables there. I mean, look what Jake Browning looked like. And I'm not
banging.
I'm not saying they're trading Jake Browning. I want to make sure that I'm not. Nobody thinks I'm saying that. I'm saying if you're looking at what they have to offer, if you really wanted to get something back and you start looking around the roster, there's not a lot there. That could be a spot. I think they could get something for Logan Woodside if he played well, if somebody really wanted to get a piece of him as a quarterback. And just think, they get something, not great, for guys that, you think are just toast. I mean, maybe Jackson Carman. Look, if they could get BJ Hill for Billy Price, who it was known at that time the Bengals were moving on from Billy Price and done with it. They had missed. Maybe they can get something for Jackson Carman if it's a guy who's played, he's got physical skills, everybody needs offensive linemen, and he's a change of scenery candidate. Maybe they could get something for him. I mean, I never would have thought they would have gotten something for Ben Wickery or for something real for Billy Price. Right? Like that's people.
But that's unusual, right? Like Billy, like everyone points to that trade, of course, because it worked out phenomenally for this team. They got rid of a guy that was frustrating for a guy that was a good role player and a starter. Like he's been great here. That's not going to happen, with every team. So there are fans that are like, yeah, we should trade Jackson Carman for a starting defensive tackle. Like,
no,
that's a position that every team covets, is somebody that can change the game from that position, or even, be a consistent run stuffer that we need. teams aren't giving that away for Jackson Carmans. And, they might have pulled off one brilliant trade like that where they really fleeced another team, but you can't really necessarily count on that. And that's what makes me always laugh when it's like, yeah, here's our worst player. Why can't we just trade this for an elite game-wrecking defensive tackle? That's probably not in the cards.
Yeah, no, I mean, you need to find a team that's pretty hard up. And it's a generational thing. I mean, it happened for them once in 2010 and another time in 2021. So you wait for that 2032 trade season and your next big fleecing is coming. It doesn't. I mean, both teams have to feel like they're getting something out of it. So, if you're looking at what the Bengals have that maybe could intrigue somebody, the league's always looking for offensive line help. The league is always going to be worried about their quarterback situations. And they'll always be willing to take chances on recent draft picks that they think they could get. So all of those maybe is where you see the Bengals having something to offer, but they don't have a ton right now if you're thinking of them adding.
Our next question is from Jen H. She has a question about Jermaine Burton that you teased with Mo. What do you think mattered more, his lack of early snaps in that preseason game or those big plays that Burton made at the end? Which of those things do you think says more about where Burton is?
Yeah, so I did mention this at the end of Balds Don't Lie with Mo on Tuesday, and we did talk about it on his radio show, but I think it's important to mention it here in that, look, I have a standard line that I use over and over again, and those that have listened to me over the years are like, oh, God, here we go with this again. But it's just the truest thing. Follow the money, follow the reps. Those are the two things that matter. Those are the real things that you can evaluate and judge how a team feels about a player on. The rest of it is BS. Throw it away. And that's why I look at that. And this is a massive red flag in regards to Jermaine Burton. The fact that he only had 5 snaps and couldn't get in ahead of Pryor and Jackson and Kwame Lassiter and was at the back of the room. I mean, whether he made plays or not, those are plays that we knew he could make plays like that. I've seen his Georgia and Alabama tape. The issue with Burton was not what he's going to look like when he's out there and they're throwing the ball up to him. You knew that, especially against whatever level of guy you were seeing. It's going to be selling insurance next week for the Bucs. You're talking about him making plays that he should make against those guys. The problem is developing enough trust to be out there with Joe Burrow early in the game. Amarius Mims did, right? He's getting praised from Burrow, and he's out there with Burrow week 1. Who wasn't? And behind everyone, Burton. So, and here's Burrow afterwards talking about he's got to get in his playbook. And we've heard, I wrote about this in the rookie report. There's a lot going on with Jermaine Burton. It's not right now. And that is reflected in the snaps. And that is a big time concern. Okay. That nothing is more powerful in that building than Joe Burrow's trust, especially if you're a skill position player. And I think he clearly doesn't have it. And that jeopardizes his chance to get on the field at all this year. Until that changes, until he builds that trust and makes some kind of progress in that regard, where he's not the guy who's behind Lassiter and Kendrick Pryor and all of those guys, like until that's not the case, that's a problem. And so I think that's a big issue and something that they're going to have to get figured out. Otherwise, you're not going to see him on the field. He's not going to help them at all this year or do much of anything this year.
Yeah, I don't like that. You just bummed me out on this.
I'm sorry. Send me a meme. Send me a picture of one of your kids looking sad. I can't help it. I can't help it. But this is the reality of follow the reps. And if you're not in that position to build Burrow's trust, you're not getting out there. You know what though? Here's if I would throw this in take workshop. Eric All will have more receptions and yards than Jermaine Burton this year.
Oh, that is interesting. Okay.
I think Eric All has looked really good. I think they love the idea of carving out a role for him. And I think he has built some trust in there, and he's healthy. Like he's ready to go, despite the fact that he's coming back off this injury. They've eased him in. I think he's ready to go, and certainly by the time they get to the opener, he'll be ready to go. I think there'll be a package for him. I think that they'll find a way to use him, and I think he ends up having a bigger impact than Burton and having more yards and receptions than him. That's my take. That's my take workshop right now.
I mean, listen, I could definitely see that. I guess it's a crowded receiver room. Yossi Vash has had a great camp. That guy will be out there making some plays. Irwin has been here a long time. He, like you said, he's got having Joe Burrow's trust is important. Trent Irwin has that trust. He's comfortable throwing Trent Irwin. That would be interesting. The Eric All stuff is interesting to me because I feel like Gesicki's going to have a big year. We've seen, what he can do other places. When you had Pitcher on the show, he was so excited about what he can bring to this offense. But Eric All, that was an intriguing draft pick. I'll be honest, I didn't think that he was going to really have any sort of role in camp. I didn't think he would be ready. I kind of thought that he would be a guy that, still recovering from that injury. We wouldn't see much of it all this season. So it is kind of encouraging to see what he could bring to this team because he could be a stable tight end of the future for you. It might not be a scenario where it's like, all right, who's the tight end we're going to have for this 1 year before he goes and gets paid somewhere else? Who is this year's brand new guy? And so that would be encouraging. I don't necessarily love it that, like Burton might end up on the short end of that stick if you think that it plays out that well. But that's more about Eric All being able to make some plays, right? Than it is totally just Burton might have been a wasted pick.
It's probably a little bit of both. I don't know about wasted pick. I mean, I just think that it's going to take, you got to have confidence that he's going to go out there and run the right routes and know the right reads and know the adjustments, and Burrow's going to trust him to make those on the fly. And until that's the case, it's just going to be hard for him to get on the field, especially when there's guys he does trust in front of him, like you said.
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about Yosh Vash, Charlie Jones. We've heard Burrow talking them up really since the middle of the offseason about how good they've looked and what they're going to do. And Jamar and T aren't coming off. So that's just where it stands. I mean, that's where it stands right now. And so until that changes, that's the way it looks.
I mean, speaking of injuries too, Charlie Jones coming back to action a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big one they avoided. I know that at the time that looked pretty bad. Our next question, this is from Paul, another Paul, not from you. That'd be great though if you started just submitting your own questions to the show to answer yourself.
I'll do an episode one time without you where I just ask a question and then I move myself into the other box on YouTube and answer
like a mustache or something like that. Yeah. All right. So Paul says the Bengals aren't cheap. It's a lazy narrative, but the family's stubborn ways, are they hurting the team on the field? We've always heard our iron sharpens iron all camp. Would Chase getting his deal not make CTB and Hill and Turner and Hilton better with all the camp reps versus one of the best receivers in the game? There's been some reports that Burrow was frustrated earlier this week with his receivers not being able to get open on that day that Higgins was out. Obviously, Chase not on the field. Jones was hurt. So, Burrow throwing to guys like Jackson and Pryor and Lassiter, he was maybe a little bit more frustrated. Is this not wasting Burrow's first real full training camp by not paying Chase? They didn't pay Bates so they could pay Higgins, but they aren't paying Higgins so they can pay Chase. So supposedly they are going to pay Chase. Why not just do it right now, get rid of the unnecessary soap opera, and make everybody better in camp? That is Paul's question.
Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
I will say this. I don't think that there was ever a time, because I have heard this a lot, so it's good to mention this. I don't know that it was ever said that, look, they're not paying Jesse because they're going to pay Higgins and Chase. That was never, I never heard that from the team. I don't think I ever said that. I never believed that to be true. I think they were individual decisions that were not, connected to each other. So I don't think that's the case necessarily. I think they're separate things. I think that this is one of the most important contracts that they'll do. And even with the least important contracts that they'll do, they find their value and they hold to it. And that's where it's going to be, specifically when they have a guy for 2 years under contract. So they're not going to move off that. So unnecessary drama, No, I mean, they feel like if it means that they have extreme roster flexibility over the middle of Burrow and Chase's big deals, that's really important to them. And they need to value that. And some preseason drama, Burrow, they're not wasting Burrow's camp. He's getting reps in. He knows how to throw to Chase. He's throwing to Higgins. He's throwing with the other guys. He's getting reps he's never gotten before. You don't need Chase out there to do it. I mean, they have found ways to be just fine without Burrow practicing at all in August. So I don't think not having Chase out there is going to have a huge effect. I don't think it's wasting anything. I think it's still valuable for him. Would you love it if Chase and the Bengals came together and like, oh man, we totally agree on what this contract should look like. Let's get it done. Yeah, sure. But that doesn't change the fact that it needs to be a deal that's right for both sides, and neither has incentive to get it done right now. On the Scoop podcast that we do at The Athletic, Diana Rossini and Chase Daniel, Diana sat down with Justin Jefferson, and this social clip's out there. I retweeted it, and asked Justin if he would have advice for these other guys that are going through what he went through last year. And his was, I never really worried about the money. I knew the money would come. I never really sat out. I just kind of went through it, and eventually it did. And to just go ball out and play and know that will eventually take care of itself, and try not to let that wear on you. Jesse Bates had the same advice for T. Higgins this past offseason. These guys that have gone through it realize, like, you're year to year in this league anyway, man. At a certain point, you just got to continue to go out there and play, and you'll have riches. And I think that message probably resonates. Jefferson and Chase, we know, have been in contact this entire time. They're boys, and so is Burrow. Like, they're all in the mix there together. I think the same attitude exists. I don't think anybody is that concerned about it. So I don't think it's some major disaster that's being played out there. It's public. It's annoying. It's frustrating for everybody that's involved in it. But there's Jamar in Chicago, hanging out, doing his thing, and he had missed the one practice. Maybe he's sending a message, whatever that is. Bottom line is, I just don't think that there's a ton of concern there. And I think he ends up listening to Justin Jefferson and just goes and balls out and knows that the money's coming at that point. Or maybe they find a way to get a deal done. I just don't think it's some disaster that kind of is being played out and kind of, said here in this question a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like maybe disaster is a little bit much. But, I mean, you're talking about these guys that are saying, yeah, just play ball, the rest will work out. And Jefferson, especially considering they have a close relationship. I mean, they weren't talking about how many different hats he was wearing last camp. Like, Jefferson wasn't, doing this. So is it surprising to you a little bit that Chase is kind of taking that attitude of trying to get his deal now and sitting out practice? Like, even if it's not a disaster, it does strike me as a little bit more surprising, especially because I sort of expected T. Higgins to not be here until at least after that first or second preseason game. Kind of more akin to like what we saw with the Jesse Bates or something like that, of a guy, playing on the tag. Didn't expect this from Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a different personality from T and even from Justin, where he's a little more outspoken, a little more out there. I mean, I remember his second game of his career in Chicago, where he was taking shots at the play calling post game. He's just a more outspoken, not afraid to put himself out there guy. I wrote about T. Higgins and his view on this whole process. He's an introvert. He doesn't want to have the drama. He doesn't like all of that stuff. Chase is like, bring it, man. I don't mind attention. I don't mind drama. I don't mind saying stuff. Like, that's who I am. And so and who knows, like, what his camp, his agent wants him to do, is saying how willing he is to listen to that. Like, I just think it's a lot of speculation, but I don't think it's some big, where the family stubborn ways does show up. Things like Evan McPherson's deal. Like,
oh yeah.
Just get, like, it's different when you're talking about pay the kicker, the kicker template, please. Can you just go out there,
get that finished?
The deal? There's like 10 kicker deals that all look the same at the top of the market. Just go give Evan that and be done with it, right? Things like that. Some of the more the easier deals. I think the fact that they're going to be a little more stubborn on some of the bigger ones has more reward than the risk that it comes with than just pay everybody whatever they want. But stuff like, man, just get Evan done. Like, can you just take care of the guys that should be taken care of that are not, the crazy one? I mean, pay your stars, but you don't have to give in immediately to whatever they're asking for.
I mean, even like, Chase bringing on the drama, it's all very self-contained drama. It's not like he's causing the team-wide drama. Like you said, he's still there with the guys. He's on the trip. Like, he's not just absent from the facility the entire camp. And it's not stuff that bleeds over when he's making fun of the Browns logo or stuff like that. It's all very kind of, with a smile on his face and contained to his world, versus the type of guys that can cause drama in locker rooms and that spreads and can kind of bum everybody out. At least it's not that type of drama. We're going to keep things with Chase, though, with this next question. This is from a Chase. He first off wants to call you out a little bit.
What?
He said that he can't believe you referenced this on the show when we were talking about what celebrities on the sideline at training camp you would go out of your way to see. He said, I cannot believe out of all people, Paul said he would make a groundbreaking, out-of-character presentation to meet Andre 3000. I totally respect it, but I never expected it from Paul. Maybe like a Bruce Springsteen. How old does he think you are? This question gets worse, though, if you're trying to think of age and stuff of that manner. He says, I'm Chase, lifetime Bengals fan. But the first team I remember watching is the 05 Bengals. So I'm a diehard Chad fan. So obviously not a very long lifetime fan, young guy. That's really part of my question. I understand the NFL in general and the nature of divisional rivalries, but Bengals v. Steelers has always felt a little more, for a lack of a better way to put it. I've always wondered if I have tied that to personal nostalgia around that 05 era and the Chad Palmer teams, or does Bengals v. Steelers genuinely have a little more behind it than some of the other rivalries in the league? It always felt more like a college rivalry back in the day growing up. And he would love your perspective on it as someone that has been following the team even longer than himself. Thanks, from Chase. Chase spelled with a Y, by the way. Don't love that. Don't love Chase with a Y. Another way you can tell he's a younger guy. And he also says that Chase pronounced like the dog on Paw Patrol. Not sure we needed that. I think that we can handle even how to pronounce Chase.
How would I have pronounced it? Like a Shays Lounge, or like a, like what are we?
Shay Wise.
Wise. Yeah, I get it. No, I get it.
We're here for you, Chase.
Yeah, I get it. First of all, I understand that Springsteen is like the old sports writer trope. Okay.
Yeah.
Every old sports writer must like Springsteen. And while I liked Bruce Springsteen just fine, I was raised on 90s hip hop, man. Like, I mean, I'm not that old. And I've always been, I've tried to be as, I don't know. I don't think I've ever not talked about this. I actually, on the first podcast I ever did covering the Bengals, our intro was the instrumental Spodioti Dopalicious Angel. And so Spodioti was like my calling. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to be, like the open to every pod. And then eventually I learned about, like, you can't do that. Like, you can't a problem. And so you had to like do your own stuff. But I've always loved, I actually met Andre 3000 covering a Bengals game in Atlanta my first year. We were going on an escalator in Hartsfield in the airport. And I look down and, I'm just looking down on my phone or whatever on the escalator. And the dude in front of me has wild shoes on. And I'm like, God, look at these shoes. And I just kind of go up, and it gets weirder as I went up. And then I'm like, oh my God, it's Andre 3000. Like, he's just on the escalator next to me in the airport. And so I'm kind of like, okay, well, what am I going to do here? Like, what am I going to do? What's my approach? And so I kind of just we were going to the baggage claim, and he ends up right near the same baggage claim as me, or at least near enough that I was willing to just stay right there and pretend that was mine. And I just sort of approached him and was like, hey man, just wanted to let you know, I've just always been a huge fan and just think your music is great. Like, you guys going to get back together. They hadn't done their reunion tour, which they did a couple years later. yet. And I was like, any chance you're going to get back together, go on tour again? Would love to see you. I told him, like, I saw you, my favorite concert ever. I saw you guys at Bogart's in 1999. Like, it was amazing. And he was so gracious. He talked to me and I was like, we chatted for probably 2-3 minutes maybe. And then he's like, I said, well, can I get a picture? And he's like, no pictures. Like, the one rule that he had was like, I'm not going to turn in this to everybody in this airport taking pictures with me. Like, I'm happy to talk to you. Like, he was happy to talk, like, as long as I wanted to, I think. And, but I don't want to take any more of his time. He was super cool. So, but that's like,
groundbreaking.
Like, that's my number one all time. I'm an Outcast guy. So I'm really, kind of a little bit offended that you wouldn't think that I know I look, I'm bald. I'm a sports writer.
Yeah,
like,
you fit the profile.
I'm in my 40s.
Sure.
I get it. I'm the stereotype. There's no question. But
maybe you inspired the reunion tour when you were like, yeah, you guys got to do it and make this happen. And he's like, sure, I will. But I've got one rule about this tour. I will not take a picture with you specifically. That's his no Paul Daniel Jr. picture rule. And I'm glad that he stuck to his guns on that. It is. So it doesn't seem like it's groundbreaking and out of character for you to fanboy over a possible reunion yourself on the Bengals sideline this time at training camp with Andre 3000. That seems very in character for you. What do you think about his take on Bengals v Steelers being better than the other rivalries in the NFL?
I have asked this question on the Bengals fan survey every year, at least since in the last couple of years, since the Chiefs kind of became in the mix. I was always curious how Bengals fans feel in terms of, do they hate the Chiefs more than the Steelers or versus the Browns? The Steelers are always like, the Chiefs have been higher, but the Steelers are always a level above the rest. It's just, for Bengals fans, it's the little brother, big brother thing that has gone on forever. The Steelers, they've got the rings, they got the one for the thumb. They have this history of hurting all these Bengals players. Like, it's always felt big brother, little brother with Pittsburgh and with Cincinnati, and they would win all the games forever. That was always a thing. And now since Burrow has come, that has changed a little bit, but that is true. I mean, I think that goes way back to the fact that the Steelers have won things. They have, I don't know what they're up to specifically now. I think they have 29 guys in the Hall of Fame now. And the Bengals fought forever to get their second, right? After Anthony Munoz, couldn't get anybody in. And all these Steelers would just keep going in over the Bengals players, and no one would even put the Bengals players in the conversation. And then, like, Kevin Huber would get his jaw broken, and Keith Rivers would get hit by Hines Ward, and Kimo von Ohlhoff. Like, all of this stuff keeps happening. It's just, there was always that exists. So yes, that is different because the history is different with Pittsburgh than anywhere else if you've been around.
Our next question is from Tony. Here's a scenario that he wants to throw at you. And now you can tell we're getting to the weirder part of the show. There's a zombie apocalypse breaking out at training camp! Exclamation.
That's a great start to a question.
You must form a team to survive. You can choose one Bengals player and one member of the Bengals media. Who do you pick and why?
Wow. Zombie apocalypse. Okay. You start off, give me what you got.
Well, I think, first off, I don't even care to survive the zombie apocalypse. Once it's happening at training camp, I'm like, well, the season's shot. Just go ahead and take me. Just put me out of my misery. But if I have to survive for the scenario, I'm going to go Cordell Volson as my player. I feel like he's got that survivor mentality that you need. Bigger guy, too. You got to go with a bigger guy. You don't want to, have Evan McPherson be your Bengals player you're trying to survive the apocalypse with. Bengals media, I don't know if you quite count him as Bengals media, being a radio guy, but I would go Dan Horde. Just because he seems like a guy that doesn't get rattled a lot, so zombie apocalypse happening, my head's spinning. I've got my big guy to help kind of keep the zombies away from us, but I need a plan if you're going to survive. What's our next move? Dan Horde seems like a guy that would be able to figure that out. He seems a guy that puts up with a lot. His schedule's crazy. He's doing UC games. He's doing Bengals. He's doing all this kind of stuff. Also as a play-by-play guy, Dave Lapham on color, he's a little bit of a wild card at times. I love him, but I know there's a lot of play-by-play guys that would not enjoy having a color analyst, kind of stepping over their big calls here and there and shouting stuff in the background. He never gets rattled by any of that kind of stuff. Very locked in, very strategic. And that is what you need when the zombie apocalypse breaks out at camp. I would also love to see his 5 observations about the zombie apocalypse and That would just be good content.
That would be great. Number 3, man, gotta tell you, didn't expect the zombies today. Like, it comes after like some observations about Ryan Rico's punting technique. It's like number 3, zombie apocalypse, big time surprise. Didn't see that coming. You know,
they crawl faster than you think.
Video of like somebody getting eaten. Yeah. For me, I think the question here is about what matters during a zombie apocalypse. What is your survival, like rate? What do you need? So for me, I think I need some people who I can run faster than, because I need the zombies
you need
to
bait.
get them before they get me. All right. So I need protectors that I know that I can run faster than, and then the zombies would feast on. So I'm going
guys from the injury room or something. Then
I'm going Trent Brown. I think I could maybe outrun him, and he's big. They're going to be like, man, give me Trent Brown. Like
he's got a tight back. He can't really run.
And then I'm going Lap because he's got the knee issues from being a former player. You can't, I have knee and back issues, so I need someone that maybe has worse knee and back issues than me. And Lap being a former player, he has knee stuff, and I love Lap, but like that's what if you're asking me a question about how am I forming a team, it's about survival for yourself, right? Isn't that everyone for themselves in a zombie apocalypse? So I think I'm just looking for people that I think that the zombies might be attracted to them before me, and I can maybe stir it away.
I just am trying to imagine them hearing about this secondhand. Like if somebody goes up to Dave Lapham and they're like, Paul Daner Jr. said if there was a zombie apocalypse, he's picking you first to help him survive. He would probably be very flattered by that.
Yeah.
And when he finds out that it's just because, you're going to be the sacrifice to the zombies so Paul can make a getaway, probably a little less flattered by that he's
sadly Lap probably still could run faster than me. which is just an indictment on myself. All right, what do we any ambush questions for me?
We got a Chris checking in, and you're gonna love this. You are changing lives out there with this podcast. He said he's been inspired by Paul. He has become a flag guy.
Wow, yes,
you did it. There's one more on the team now. You got a flag guy. He says his house sits back from the road, so he's gone with a 12 by 18-inch flags on a bar mounted to the mailbox post. I hope that's okay in the flag world. I don't know. He says he's quickly acquired a decent array of flags with the usuals, OU, Bengals, holidays, plus one salute to the local high school football team and a photo flag for his wife's birthday, possibly a big mistake. Where do you come in on the photo flag?
I'm okay with the photo flag. I like any custom flag. Like,
what are you flying for your wife's birthday?
Happy birthday. We have a happy birthday flag that flies for anybody's birthday.
So you're not doing custom photo flags for her. Could be a misstep.
Yet.
His flag rookie question is, how does he store these things? Does he need a flag locker, a flag rack? Does he need to call our old friend Stanio to find a house with a flag room? How does he keep them organized and looking good?
Okay, so I have a flag rack. It sort of like reminds me, it's their slots basically. It's kind of like if you ever go to like an apartment building and they have all the mail slots. It kind of looks like that. You just take some wood and just make yourself a nice little group there, and you slide them in. So you roll them up and slide them in so they all fit in there, and you can do as many as you want, and make yourself a nice little flag case holders that are easy to just pull out. A numbering system is important, so have the numbering system on the top. Write down each slot number and what corresponding flag is inside it, because you don't want to have to be pulling them out. Like, wait, is the back to school flag this one or that one? No. Have them numbered, keep them in there. So you just go look at the number and pull that out, and it makes easy storage. And so I recommend that. Don't be afraid to go bigger flag now. I mean, I know, look, you're comfortable with your mailbox, your 12 by 18. It's a little meek for me. I think if you're a flag guy, you got it. You can't be afraid to fly it. And so get a big one. Be proud. You don't need to just fly a little quiet little flag there. Go get a big pole. I've always wanted to be a big pole guy. I don't, with like where you can pull it up and down more. I just have the one that attaches to the house. Maybe one day.
Someday you can be a big pole guy. And
don't be afraid. I'm just saying, don't be meek. You can go bigger than that. But yeah, I get your slots and number them and keep a little key on the top so you know which one's which.
All right, some good flag dork talk to really round out this show is important. Again, send all your questions to the growlerpodcast@gmail.com as things ramp up in intensity here as we get closer and closer to the start of the regular season. And all our growl pals that live locally or are going to come into town for those preseason games, make sure you're coming to see us, especially on Thursday, the 22nd at our live show. That's going to be a big one. 4 p.m., right? Start for that
4 p.m.
show?
start. 4 p.m. start. Yep. And then don't forget, because BetMGM Nation is our exclusive home for all of our live shows. The big kickoff show that we do every year is going to be down there this year on the Thursday, the 5th, the day of the opener between the Chiefs and the Ravens. We'll be down there starting at 7:00. All, ton of Bengals media previewing the season, predictions, takes, all the stuff, plus our normal chaos that we do at these shows. It is going to be a blast. Anybody that's come to those in the past knows how much fun we have at those previewing the season. So we hope to see you come down for that. That'll be the show after the preseason game against the Colts. So we go Colts and then season kickoff show are our next two down there. I
was just giving out free money too at this last show. Like after the show, I was just giving out free money on the advice of bets. I was because those unders had been smashing, and I was just sharing that with everybody. And I think a few of them took my advice and took that under on the Bengals game and probably made a nice little profit. So that's what we do for our people, is really help them out. A lot of good eggs from the Growl Pals. There was one drunk woman at that show that desperately wanted her question answered. I don't know if you were able to see her from the table up there while I was working the room with a wireless mic, but the Q&A with Dre was going great. And there was one weird question. And so then I started screening everybody's questions a little bit better. And I asked her what her question was. She's like, I want to ask them how they're going to protect Burrow. I'm like, okay, well, that's a question for Paul and Jay. Right? Like they can handle that. We're not going to bother Dre with like, all right, can you get into the intricacies of the protection schemes for Joe Burrow? Also, that's not even that big of a question. They drafted a tremendous right tackle. They signed Trent Brown. Like the offensive line isn't the primary question going into this season, let alone when you've got a former Bengals great there, and ask him questions about his era, ask him questions about himself. That's what he's there for. And then once he's gone, then you can ask, Paul and Jay your normal questions. She didn't like that because she was enjoying the show, enjoying her time down there at the Banks.
Many Cincy lights.
Yeah, she was very much enjoying that, still trying to flag us down. And I was told later by somebody on our staff, my wife, who was working the camera for that one, that she, even afterwards, after Dre left, she like ran down and chased him down on the street to ask her question about Joe Burrow and trying to get that into him. And he was very nice and entertained it and gave her a hug, and because he's a great dude. But she was the only one that was very intent on circumventing us to get her question answered.
That could have gone the wrong way because Dre had protection with him.
Yeah, you don't want to accost people that got a team around him.
Yeah, he had a couple of dudes who were there to make sure everybody knew that they were dudes that were here with Dre. And so I'm glad that it went well for her and that everybody came out of it okay and she got her question answered. Where are you at next, by the way?
Okay, so I'm going to be at our live shows on the 22nd, the 5th. So I go back out in mid-September. I am starting to put together the fall and winter tour. So if there's a city that any of our Growl Pals live in, they want me to come to their town, shoot me an email. I'm still stacking cities onto that. And at the end of September, I'm going to Las Vegas. And this is like one of the tricky things about comedy too, is you get people that are always like, oh, how's the stand-up career going? Where are you going? This and that. And I'm doing a very high-profile comedy festival in Las Vegas. Some of the best comedians working right now are going to be the Shane Gillis, Dave Attell, Beth Stelling, Ohio's own. So Mark Norman, some of these guys that are huge acts, like they're all going to be at this big comedy festival. I'm probably going to be one of the least famous people there, but it is like a very exclusive thing. And I was excited to be part of this and invited to it. But it's called Skankfest, right? So it means a lot to people that are in the comedy community are like, yeah, that's a great festival. We know those guys. But when I'm talking to relatives, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this big thing. It's Skankfest. They're like, oh, Okay, so are you one of the skank? Like it's sort of
you a skank?
borderline embarrassing.
Why are we saying this term?
Yeah, but it's like it's probably the best comedy festival in the country. So it's like, no, it's a really cool thing, and then I gotta just explain Skankfest. It's not even worth the time. So I'll be in Las Vegas for some shows, and that's enough.
Shows, very high profile. Yeah.
Yes.
So, good to know. Love that.
Dad life. Let's wrap things up. What's going on in your world?
Well, back to school is the flag. As anybody with
flags up. Yeah, we're in back to school mode.
Flag knows. Here's the one thing. This is something that I'd forgotten, and I am happy to have remembered, is that especially because my youngest is starting kindergarten, which is a big jump. Like these days are very full for them emotionally, mentally, like it's nervous. Like they expend a lot of energy trying to get through these first couple of weeks, specifically in kindergarten. And I remember being really stunned by this when my oldest went through this, and I had sort of forgotten until I was very much reminded the last couple of days about people think that like the mornings are going to be hard, getting them going, getting to school, especially we have very early start, but that's neither here nor there. But that's kind of the hard thing. Oh, they're nervous, or getting them in the door. No, the hard part about back to school, and specifically starting something new in this young age, is not the days. It is the nights, because they are exhausted. And when they are exhausted and they get home, you are buckling the hell up until bedtime, because it's just out of character. Everything you're going to get meltdowns. You're going to get frustration. You're going to get all of it. You just got to know it. I just forgot that. I was like, before that first day, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is what's happening. Redo the talk. Be patient. They're going through something. Be patient. More so than even normal. And I was like, oh man, it's such a smack in the face that you forget about until you start going through again. Like, oh yeah, that's right. The nights are terrible now. But the good news is they fall asleep like that. When you actually do get them to bed, it is easy to get them to sleep. And I remember it lasting last time for probably 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll see if it ends up being the same with my youngest. But I think that's probably the case too. If you had a kid in any grade going to a new school or something, or whatever, or maybe just whatever new level that they're going to, anything, it's so exhausting for them that by the time they hit the end of the day, it's all coming out, and you got to take it.
Yep, that's a special kind of meltdown. The back to school adjustment meltdown. Like if you've got that, probably in a category only with like hungry wife meltdown. Like it's just a separate beast that you just have to take it and get through it. Our big problem is we moved during the summer, so we're in a new neighborhood, and we've got the mornings aren't tricky for the reasons you like. That's a little bit easier. You've got the formula, get them fed, dressed, get them out the door. I wasn't ready for like being in this new neighborhood, how dressed up people get for the bus stop. These other parents, when they're waiting for the bus, I'm used to just stumbling out of the house in whatever. Everyone else at this bus stop looked like they were showered and dressed well. It felt like a job interview that I didn't know was happening. Getting to this little bus stop, and there's 6 or 7 parents that are all dressed like they're ready to step into the office at 6:45 a.m. And I am dressed like I woke up at 6:44 a.m. And I feel like that's the energy you should bring to the bus stop. But I've got to get adjusted to that, and the fact that everyone's bringing their A game before 7 a.m.
I've definitely worried about my morning, like the morning judgment that I get, where people are like, do you have a job? Do you just not care about your physical appearance? Like, look, I work from home in the mornings. All right. I don't need to get dressed up. Okay.
I'm getting ready for a podcast. Leave me alone.
You feel like you have to explain yourself. It's like, look, it doesn't make you better than me. Okay. Just because I'm in sandals and my basketball shorts.
Yeah. And that's right. And that's kind of the shame you feel, as everyone else has got their act together, which is still just shocking to me. But, we'll get there. We'll get through it.
We sure will. Well, this was a good one. We did it. The next time that we'll be back together, we'll be down at the live show.
Yeah.
Next Thursday.
Some more chaos and graders and prizes.
Prizes, all of it. And just making people rich and learning about Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins fans as well, which I'm looking forward to. So it's going to be a great combination of people. So it'll be fun. I will see you down there Thursday, and we'll talk to everybody next time. Have a good one.